and welcome back to grade 5 science. Today we'll be continuing with block 1 circulatory system. S3 functions of the blood. Today's aim is to identify the functions of the blood. Please note down the keywords: hemoglobin, white blood cells and red blood cells. Now we will look at the activity. As we are unable to do class activities at this situation, now it is time to put your imagination to test. So imagine these 4 bubbles to be 4 people. The first is lungs, then small intestine, body parts and kidney. Now there is a 5th person called the transporter in the middle. The work of the transporter is to take and give things or cards from the 4 people standing around him. For example, he gives a card named carbon dioxide to lungs and receives a card called oxygen, and then he goes to the small intestine and small intestine gives him nutrients. Then he goes to the body parts and the body parts give him carbon dioxide and waste while he gives him back oxygen. Then he goes to the kidney and returns the waste, and that is the circle. Imagine it carefully because it is a bit tough to explain it on a PowerPoint. Now please note that this process keeps going on a circle. That is why he started off with a carbon dioxide card, which he gave to lungs in the starting. Now, who do you think the transporter is? And which organ does the transporter represent in the circulatory system? We will be looking at it throughout the presentation. Before that, we'll go through a small section of digested food, which will lead on to the main topic. How is digested food transported? To come to this answer, you might need to recall and think, what is one of the main functions of blood, and where does the blood absorb the nutrients? So the digested food is transported by the blood and it is absorbed by the blood in the intestine via villi. So now we'll come to the main topic in the transportation of nutrients. Now we will come to the main topic, the functions of the blood. There are many functions of blood and we will look at them one by one. The first is transportation of nutrients. Nutrients in our body are dissolved sugar. So nutrients from dissolved food or digested food is transferred to the blood vessels in the small intestine, and it is done via villi. We'll come to know what villi are later. Blood carries the nutrients to all parts of the body. That is how transportation of nutrients happens. Now we will look at the transportation of oxygen. Oxygen is carried from and to, from the lungs to the heart and from the heart to the body parts. And then this is accompanied by hemoglobin. We'll come to know what hemoglobin is later on. Now for the transportation of carbon dioxide. After the oxygen has been given to the cell, hemoglobin, which is with the red blood cell, binds with the carbon dioxide and it is then taken to the lungs to be sent out of the body as a waste material. Then we'll look at some extra facts about villi and hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is a pigment found in the RBCs, red blood cells, which helps in the transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide by binding to them. So binding means that they mix together to form a compound, so that it becomes more easier for the RBCs to carry the material. Now villi are small finger-like structures found inside and on the inner wall of the small intestine, through which nutrients are transported to the blood. Now we will look at the transportation of waste material. So waste material is carried from all over the body to the kidneys to be removed. So the kidneys are the place where the waste materials are sent out. Now, what does the blood do? It protects us from diseases. As the blood contains WBCs, that is white blood cells, it is efficient, it is good in fighting bacteria, harmful bacteria and germs, and protects us from diseases. Now we'll look at clotting of injuries. So as the blood has platelets in them, which you will come to know in the higher classes, blood has platelets in them, and these platelets help in the clotting of wounds and injuries, and they also help in the growth of new skin underneath the clotting.
Okay, now imagine that your mother is cutting vegetables in the kitchen. Suddenly, she cuts her finger while she is cutting the vegetables, and blood is flowing from the wound. Do you think she might die of that small injury? No, people don't die for that small injury, except of some rare cases. And because of this clotting of blood, because platelets are in the blood start clotting the wound so that less blood flows out of the body. But there are some cases like hemophilia where people don't have enough platelets in their blood and they start losing a lot of blood, and each time they cut themselves the flowing does not stop and they die. In many cases they die. That's why people with hemophilia have to be very careful around really sharp objects.
As I mentioned before, this slide is only for general knowledge and you will be taught about this in higher classes. Now for the HOTS. So here's the question again for only to ponder. Why do you feel weak and dizzy sometimes when you lose a lot of blood? When you get hurt or injured and you lose a lot of blood, you suddenly start feeling weak and dizzy and you feel like vomiting, and people faint when they lose a lot of blood. Why do you think that happens? They just lost blood, nothing else happened, right? Then why do they faint? You see, the reason they faint is because blood supplies oxygen to the body, and when a lot of blood is lost, the supply of oxygen to many parts of the body has been cut off. So body parts start to slow down in working, and that leads you to feel weak and dizzy and sometimes faint. Now we'll go on to the worksheets. Today you will be doing worksheet S3. So the first question, you have to read the question properly, and for the first question, read the questions properly and answer correctly. Now the second question, you have to go through the lesson on your own, through the video on your own, and write what you think the blood does. The third question is, what happens when the oxygen level is lost? And the third question is, what happens to the oxygen level when a lot of blood is lost? Think about what happens to the pulse rate and what happens when you lose a lot of blood to your body. Now we will go for the practice questions. We will be doing practice question 5 and 6, and I will not be helping you with them. You have to do them on your own, and we will be checking them on when I release the checking video. Now we will go for the homework. Finish S3 and do practice question 5 and 6 in your notebooks. And remember, someone is watching you if you try to copy. Be good, stay healthy. Thank you. Have a nice day.